Welcome to Martini Time. Another beautiful day here in Blackstone, the center of the world. But then you too are at the center of the world. I've really cut my gin consumption in half. So, the name of this talk is the Paranoia Tree. I was writing about that this morning, and it was about grafting. You know, you can graft two trees together. You cut a little notch out and you graft the notch of another tree in it, and it binds and it becomes a totally different tree. So this is the story of the Paranoia Tree. Now, you know, I write about politics from a wide-angle view because I'm 81 and I've been an adult during since the 50s, let's say I grew up in the 50s. So from 1960, the late 50s, 1960, on to now, I've been an aware adult. I wasn't seeing it through the eyes of a child. So I'm what you might call a Facebook elder. So you guys are whippersnappers. So I have a wider angle lens than many. And my wide angle lens goes back to Goldwater and Nixon and the Paranoia Tree. Now Nixon was paranoid. He saw himself and his little band of brothers as being surrounded and attacked by this malevolent enemy. Somebody was out to get Nixon. And, so it was really a shadow projection on the screen of the world. Somebody was out to get him. So he was in an attack mode, and so he was out to get them first. And when he got to be president, it seemed to get magnified. Obama said, that's what happens to you when you become president. Your faults and your strengths and your weaknesses get magnified. So anyway, when LBJ went totally into civil rights, you see, JFK started it, and but LBJ went into it full blown, and the civil rights legislation was passed. Now before that, the South was called the Solid South. It was Southern Baptist, but Southern religious Democrats. Because in the South, the church and politics, everything's pretty close. So it was the Southern Democrats. And they were, of course, the segregationist party, just like in the Civil War, but then they weren't Democrats. So, but maybe they were. But anyway, the point was that when civil rights opened the door for black people, political power now, for blacks, that activated slaveholding fears that the slaves would rise up because there were more of them. So they left the party and they went with Wallace. And it's moralism. So they invited these exiled Democrats into the Republican Party, and that was the graft of the two trees. Now, see, segregation was God ordained. So it was a moral position in the South. It still is, for many. So this idea then was, and then right after that, if you recall, well, maybe you don't, but I do, as TV began to spread, so did TV preachers, Jerry Falwell, and evangelicalism, which is an expanding religion. The evangelical call is to go out and get people to come to Jesus. The whole thing is about that. Billy Graham in a whole football stadium of people, challenging them to come to Jesus. That means to witness your faith. Nothing wrong with that. But when it became political, there is something wrong with it. Because that paranoia of Nixon and the paranoia that the Yankees and the black people were going to out to get us, and we better circle our wagons here, went into the Republican Party. And so moralism was introduced into the party of family values, the moral party. And whenever you have moralism, you have a division like this. I'm good, they're evil. And everything you see is through the lens of this half, so everything that isn't you is evil. Everything that isn't you is corrupted. Everything that isn't you is impure. Everything that isn't you needs to be fixed. Everything that isn't you is trying to attack you. So the only solution to that is not compromise, because you can't compromise with the devil. You have to remove them. You put a wall up. You exterminate them. You dismiss them. You deny them. Whatever the strategy. But you can't deal with it, because it's evil. It's very simple. The world becomes very certain. So the paranoid tree is the tree under which we live now. And the fruit is always bitter from the paranoid tree. And it takes every generation, the tree looks different, but it's got the same fruit. It may look like oranges or apples or whatever, but it all tastes bad. So now we have the unique situation where, for the first time, this paranoid tree got a voice. It became a tree person. In other words, it was like the tree was kind of like principles. The Republican Party was on principles, the law, principles. We stand on principles in the law. But when Trump came in, he personified the tree. He became the tree. Now it's a living tree. It's a living paranoia. And it's like a oak tree. It's like a tree that can't, it's like kudzu. It's like kudzu, you see. It's just spread. It wants to spread over. It's evangelical in that it wants to spread over in the whole world. An expansion. We got to expand myself. Got to expand, you see. And this fits into Trump's personal tree. The expansion of his brand. The expansion of his name. He can't get enough. There must be more. There's a beach in North Korea. I'd like to put a condo on that. That would be a great place for a hotel. Beautiful beach. See, so everything in these eyes, you see, is a opportunity for expansion of me. And also the expansion of the paranoia. They go together. So anyway, this is the metaphor for today. The paranoid tree. And it seems to me that once this tree becomes personified, it's going to be chopped down. It can't sustain itself, because if you look at some of these go down south and you look at the oldest tree, my wife was talking about one in Charleston. It's so old that the limbs have to be propped up. The limbs cannot stand themselves. That has to be propped up, you see, because it just has grown beyond its natural state. That's what paranoia does. It drives you beyond your natural ability to stand up. You have to be propped up. And it becomes absurd. So paranoia will always, unchecked, become absurd. Because it will overextend beyond its natural strength, its natural roots, you see. It becomes, it's out of place. It doesn't fit the whole anymore. It doesn't fit the forest. It doesn't fit the garden. It doesn't fit anything. It's an abomination. It needs to be trimmed, cut down. It doesn't fit the context. So paranoia will always grow so it doesn't fit the context. And in movies, this is called a sting. With Robert Redford and Paul Newman. Remember, I love that movie. Now, a sting is when you have a person who is very powerful and you create the conditions so that their own strength defeats them. And the more they struggle, the more they are trapped because they can only use their strength. So they are defeated by their own martial arts. The judo, you don't use your strength against you use their strength against them, you see. So anyway, what I'm suggesting here is that when there's paranoia, when there's a paranoia tree, the fear of the other, you're going to create a sting because life cannot support your absurdity, your overextension, being out of context, you see. Life is always in balance. If anything is out of balance, life will correct it. Life will get it back in alignment or remove it. Period. So Trump is life. We're all life. So whenever we get caught up in our own paranoia tree, we're going to create the sting that will put us back in alignment with life. Will put us back in alignment with the garden. Will put us back in alignment with the totality. Because no part can be greater than the whole. No part can dominate the whole. Every part of the organism must work for the good of the whole. If one of the organisms goes crazy and starts being for itself, we call that a cancer. So, thanks for dropping in. I'll see you tomorrow.